Welcome to the DiverseMinds Podcast, where we give you the tips, tools, and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being, and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being. Welcome to the 83rd episode of the award-winning DiverseMinds Podcast. And as we head into April, our focus will be on personal development. And with the personal development themes, we centered on self-awareness, looking at how you want to shape your life, personal challenges, and long-standing aspirations. And with this theme, this is a bridging episode that brings to the forefront another fabulous female entrepreneur. To kick off today and joining me is Rosie Khandwala, the co-founder of Aqua Natural Limited. Aqua Natural manufacture natural hair removal products for both the professional and retail markets. And Rosie's career started at age 15 working as an apprentice in her cousin's salon in Tanzania. At the time, they had no access to imported cosmetics or skincare, so they had to adapt and learn the skills of holistic natural treatments. They made all the skincare treatment used in the salon at home, formulated from natural ingredients extracted from herbs, fruits, and they combined their home recipes. And the most popular was the waxing treatment. This was made by mixing sugar and lemon into a paste, which is a traditional way and which is what became super popular. So Aqua Natural was established in the UK in 1989. So I'm delighted to be joined by a very well-established female entrepreneur, really trailblazing in what she did and what she does now. After moving to the UK from Tanzania, whilst Rosie's husband was setting up his trading business, she was trying to look for something that would give her flexibility to attend to her young and extended family. With her background, it seemed that the natural thing to do was to set up as a mobile therapist. And she realized while she was setting up, there's a real absence of sugar and natural waxes within the waxing sector in the UK. So this then prompted Rosie and her husband to start the business, and the market was wide open at the time, and they were extremely optimistic. But what she didn't realize was that they had very little knowledge in marketing and the beauty industry, and soon the 90s recession followed. But lessons were learnt the hard way, and she survived, and they're still running as a family business. So Rosie, a huge welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Leila. What a coincidence that we meet like this again after a couple of years.
I know.
And it was perhaps it's nice when you meet somebody that you can follow up and just say, even though we don't see each other or we don't talk to each other, but we can start where we left off because we share something in common, and that's lovely to just catch up.
Yeah, that's right, because we met at a sort of quote unquote industry event, if you like, for freelancers that are looking to build their audience on online platforms. And we just happened to gravitate towards each other, didn't we? And sit next to each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And not a million miles away, but it seems like in this country.
I know. And also culturally, we're not a million miles away at all, are we? So we've got very similar cultural heritages, which is interesting.
That's nice. Yeah, I think that brings people much closer, and it's just bonding with each other. I think there are some people whom you just connect with, don't you? And we're very fortunate that even after, some time had gone past, and then we corresponded on the email, and here we are talking now, just finding out more about each other, I guess. Or more about myself.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And I was saying, when I was reading out your bio and you sent it to me, there were things that I didn't know about you. So I think one of the things that'd be really interesting to hear is your take on entrepreneurship, because it means different things to different people. It means different things depending on your culture as well. So Rosie, what does entrepreneurship mean to you?
I think in a way, when you think, you always have to look back, because I've been now in the industry more 32 years. And it wasn't something that I had intended to do, starting a business. It just came my way. And when opportunities come your way, you just take them. And I guess the reason being that I had just moved from Tanzania. It was a year that, I was 7 months pregnant with my second child when I arrived here. And you just feel you want to settle in a way, but at the same time, at the back of your mind, you know that you want to have some sort of freedom or independence. Mm. And because I'd worked most of I started my career at the age of 15, working as an apprentice in a beauty salon in my cousin in Tanga. And so that was for me a stepping stone into knowing about how, businesses are run. Well, I won't say I ran her business, but just looking at, the customers and the clients and taking the money and different treatments. So there was an introduction very earlier on. And that helped me perhaps to just instill in me that I would like to still do that, even I moved into this country. So when I came here, I just thought, I didn't have any qualification. I don't have a degree. I just finished my O levels. And but inside me, there's always this, that if something happened, I would get involved in it. And I got in a lot of, different projects in Tanzania. It just kept me busy. Anyway, so here I wanted to start as a mobile therapist because having young children and my in-laws with me as well, I thought that would give me the flexibility to just, earn some pin money. And that's how I came across to start a business. And yeah, it was, sometimes you don't, actively look for something, but I was very fortunate that it happened. And it's a weird feeling when you think back that how it all happened, that sort of whole process of then how do you establish yourself in an environment which is completely new to you. But then you start learning. If you start a business, it's something that you adapt to it, you start learning. There's so many facets to it. And since we started at the bottom, that we didn't buy a business, we actually built the business. So it was sourcing for, first finding a place where to start the business. That was very crucial because you want something that is not too far from home. You are able to communicate. So there are a lot of things you have to take into consideration to make it practical for you as well. And we were being offered a place about 15 miles away with the mortgage being paid. There was a government scheme that they would subsidize the mortgage on the property. But, you just seem to think that all that was very tempting. But this place that we had is 3 minutes from home. So for me, it was much more easier to manage that, and also working with the husband as well, and keeping, work, family life in place. So for us, it was finding the unit, finding the equipment, then setting it all up, sourcing what you want to, because it was a product that we were going to make. So we had the raw materials, all this, I think that gave you a much more better understanding of your own business. So that's the first part of it. Then the second part is that something that I think is every entrepreneur, sometimes, you think you've got a good product, you can make it, but the marketing side of it is the most difficult and challenging. We went into an industry, the beauty industry, it was quite unknown to me and Hafiz, how the working of the industry, especially the professional market side of it, not knowing anybody, who do you turn to, who would give you the right advice. And that perhaps is the lesson that I learned very earlier on, that if you don't know your market, it can be quite difficult to then sell your product. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, and it's really interesting because you have done things. So it's about your family, it's about your priorities, it's about managing, it's also about stretching yourself. And actually that all your products now, Rosie, the sugaring is natural. So something about being natural has also been really, really important to you, which for me is something around, I think I just love your story around how they weren't the products, so you made them and then you brought that here. So anything you wanted to say as well about the natural element of it, the sugaring, what you do. And also if I could just pick up on your name, because Khandwala is sugar, isn't it? The one who sells sugar.
Yes, it is. How bizarre can that be? So my husband's family, our surname is Khandwala, and my father-in-law's business was they dealt in sugar. And my maiden name is Sukhadwala. We were dealt in, and we were distillers of sandalwood oil. So when we started the product, we used the sugar and we infused the product with sandalwood oil. So it was just a bit bizarre that the two products of the surname can come together.
Yeah, destiny always finds you, Rosie, always.
Yeah. So sugaring came by because, in when I was growing up in my teenage years in Tanzania, it was a the economic situation was a bit being socialist. So people who know that, in Africa, when there was a lack of importation of luxury goods, not necessarily luxury, but even the basic stuff you couldn't get. There were shops, but they were most of them empty. You couldn't buy clothes, you couldn't buy makeup, you couldn't buy cosmetics, you couldn't buy anything. But half of my time was just queuing for just getting either rice was in the market or the oil was in the market. And that was a sort of years that my early years were, And I think amongst our Asian culture, we always have maintained that our skincare has been a priority. So in the salon, when my cousin used to do treatments, because we couldn't find anything, it was literally taking our whole holistic treatments and using that. So for example, the yogurt that we would have, which has got the life culture in it, which is much more effective on your skin. Egg as a skin tightener. We used to use a lot of aloe vera. We have the haldi and chana paste, which, as a skin mask. So things like that were the things that, I was introduced into it. And that was the use of skincare that I've always done it. So when I came here, and of course, sugaring used to be hair removal was the big thing. Being in the tropics, everybody removed hair. And even amongst, being the weather you would wear, the outfits that you would wear were short and you'd never want to be seen with any dark hair on your skin. So waxing was another popular treatment that we did. And we made it at home, just mixing sugar and lemon juice and using it in the salon. So that's when I came here. And when I was setting up, I couldn't find sugar wax. Well, they said it was honey wax. So I tried the honey wax and I thought, well, I can't wash this away. So, and that what prompted that I realized that all the waxes had ingredients which were all chemically formulated. And that was how I thought that, look, we did a market research and we realized that there was nothing. Yeah, so this is 1989 we're talking about. There was nothing in the market, and that prompted me to set up. So even when I set up the manufacturing side of it, it was done in the same logic that, we would cook it at home, mixing sugar and lemon juice. And I've replicated the same method. So we bought this huge second-hand they were industrial in a sense that they used these soup vessels for the army. So it has a stove underneath and it's a huge 50-gallon pot. So that's how I started mixing sugar and lemon juice. And it lasted, well, the problem we had, although we were manufacturing it like that, but when you use up the product in a short period of time, which we did in Tanzania, that was fine. But when you are packaging volume of, being as a production line, we came across this when we got the contract for the body shop, that the product was inconsistent. So when we had our initial order, which went almost to all the all the shops and body shop in UK as well as in Europe and apart from North America. So there were about 1,500 shops then. And when we sent the product out, we had a recall within a few months. And the reason was that the product was inconsistent because when it went to countries where it was warm, the sugar started melting. And the countries which was cooler, the sugar started crystallizing. So that was the first lesson that I learned that, this can't, you think you can replicate, what you used to make, but when you start into as a business, which obviously we plunged ourselves into, right, from a time that we.
When you tried to scale up, that there were certain challenges that you might not have perceived, or predicted is the word, actually, not perceived, but and so would you say that was your biggest leadership journey, is knowing that things that you might do on a micro scale at home don't necessarily scale up, and kind of dealing with those challenges?
It depends on what product you've got. I think, but you should bear that in mind, because then you are also relying on, when you scale up, you have to rely on so when you're sourcing your materials, how often can you get, what is the time scale, when, so we had a time when during summer periods where we would sell a lot more, but then the winter months, we had to scale down. So there was, in our case, it was a bit frustrating that we had this peak and troughs, time that, there were a few months which was very busy, and then the rest of the time. So it's how you manage your business. I think the other lesson I would say, never end up just having, if you've got a manufacturing place, always try and utilize that you can have another business to go along with, because when we lost the contract with the body shop, we found it very, very quickly that we were left high and dry, not knowing what to do. So if you can put another business alongside with your core business, then it would be something that you should consider.
So don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's what you're saying. Make sure that you have different income streams, different contracts, different ways of bringing your money together.
Absolutely. And I think when you say that, the question you asked me about how did I become an entrepreneur, I think you have to believe in yourself sometimes, I would never give up unless I was told, no, you can't do this. So, when I was negotiating with the body shop, it took us a year, but, because they take so much time in deciding, that they're a large company. So you have to persevere with something that for sure that either you get an answer which should be, just wait, just make sure that, you don't give up, even if it takes time, because within yourself, you have to believe that what you've got is something that you have to persevere with, rather than, getting a bit disheartened, because there are going to be moments that it can be very, very disheartening, losing, especially when you're losing money, that when the crunch comes.
I think there's incredibly wise words, and there's no such thing as an overnight success, is there? We see people that might look like an overnight success, but it's all the things that go on underneath, and it takes time, and it's that little often and small and consistent, and it's very unlikely that some people can do it, but it's very unlikely you're going to make millions overnight. And that's okay. But it's being realistic about that, isn't it?
Well, the thing is that you always start at a very, when you're starting a business, you are at a high, and you think that it's going to happen, and you get very impatient about it. And what you do, that you get so absorbed in it that you know that you are trying so hard that every time, because business is you take one step forward, and sometimes it's 2 steps backward, because you can't foresee the circumstances that are going to come along your way. So you have to be prepared at every step. And then the other thing I would say that, knowing your business right from the bottom, nobody should be indispensable. So, if somebody doesn't turn up to work, or, tries to, you often get people who would say that, I'm leaving, they've learned something and then moving on. And you find yourself that to take on their place, you should know when to just get, get into their position, because you can't rely on everybody who's going to work for you, but you should know exactly how the whole business structure is. That's the other thing that I realized, that you find yourself sometimes with people that you rely on, and then you are left very dependent on them. And makes it a bit more difficult than to try and consolidate their work.
Yeah. And so what would you say how could people turn their hobby or passion into a business? What would you say if someone sort of asked you now, and I'm sure you get people asking you all the time, but particularly in the area of beauty, if someone's got a product, maybe a natural product they make at home, and someone wants to turn it into a business, like, how do you think people can do that?
I think business is about educating yourself first. I've learned that it was every step you have to learn different aspects of the business. You just can't think that, you've got a hobby and it can turn into, and in my case, I would say that was something that happened, that I thought I wanted to unpin money and this was what I'm going to make and just sell it. But it's never easy. I think understanding your business and learning the whole process of how you want to achieve and what you want to achieve, how far do you want to go with your product, and understanding your market. I think that is the key to it, which is who is your target audience, who you're going to sell it to. Are they around near you? Are they, who do you know who would probably influence to get some support if you need? Because I think for me, I realized that I felt slightly lonely when I was doing this, because you need somebody else to guide you through, especially in your early days. We've made mistakes because we didn't know, you could either take somebody's word for it and realize that it didn't suit the business, their advice. So you have to find somebody whom you can rely on to give you a good guidance, or who've been in the business. These days, there are so many places you can go to for advice. There are also online. You can, find out a lot more on the internet on how you teach yourself about certain things, or, there are industry professionals who will give you advice. Now, you can go on Clubhouse and join a group and talk about it, and people will give you advice. So it is, I think the more listening you do, the better it would be, because when you are, if it's your own business, you think for yourself. But when you listen to somebody else, you realize that, it's something, what you are thinking is not the same that they are thinking. And that's I would really say that, when you can be passionate, but there are certain steps that you overcome before you don't really put your money in the business that you want to start.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And also, what do you think about, you had cultural capital in terms of your background and the way you do things, and particularly from our South Asian, African diaspora backgrounds. What do you think are some of the benefits then that people can bring in terms of culture to their business?
I think each family background is different. There are
absolutely.
some who are very supportive. There are some who can, be very negative. When you have a young family at home, I think it's very difficult to walk away and say, my commitment is now to build a business. And, starting a business would take quite a lot of your time away from home. So I was very fortunate that I had my husband to deal with, and he was very supportive. My mother-in-law, I appreciate. I think you only realize that now when you have a small family, that you need somebody where you know that your children are taken care of in a safe environment. And that, for me, I can never repay that for the sacrifice that my in-laws made for me. I think that security gave me the ability to come to work at the hours that I wanted to, because otherwise, if you're depending on childcare or somebody to look after your children, it is not ideal situation. So so every different background, every different families are different. There are some, those who came in the 50s, as you can see that their culture was different because most of the men worked. But then you got the Ugandan families who came, and then the husband and wife started business. And that's how the Asian business in this country has flourished so much, because I think the attitude in when you're brought up in from East African background or African those who have moved from India early in Africa and having lived in a multicultural society, it's a different mindset to when you come from a very traditional background. So no, I guess, but family commitment is something that I think for me, even though I was coming to work, but I wouldn't have thought that I could say that I'm having a couple of days away trying to market my product or, being away from home, which a lot of people have to do, because if you want to build your brand, it's the hours that you have to start sacrificing. And that is one of the things probably I couldn't do in my earlier years, that I had a product that I wanted to. Probably London was the place because the beauty industry much more focused over there, that I could just take off and say, look, I'd be on the road for a couple of days trying to, sell or promote the brand or take it to somewhere or, see a customer. It was a bit difficult. I couldn't bring myself to do that. But I guess when time goes by and as you grow older and you become wiser and you find that there are other ways of how you can manage your business and keep that family work balance.
So it's that thing, isn't it, about collectivism and how family is wider than a nuclear family, thinking about that cultural capital, ways of doing things differently. There's a lot that we have to offer, being from, I think, diaspora backgrounds, however you want to define diaspora, as you said, because everyone's going to have a different family culture. And you're an incredibly busy person, Rosie. So I wanted to ask you, and being an entrepreneur, how you look after your own mental health. What are your top 3 tips?
My top 3 tips, I would say, is for me, my morning walk. I have at least 20 minutes or half an hour to myself every morning. And that just freshens up my mind to start off my day. The other thing is that even during lockdown, I think I've always kept myself groomed to keep that feeling of that, I think once you let yourself go, you don't have that confidence in you. So it's very vital that you maintain your self-discipline in a way that, so for me, jewelry also, even though I come to work, I work on the factory floor, but I make sure that I have my jewelry just to make me feel that, I'm doing something which just good for me. And then the other is that we don't take work home. So no matter how many hours I need to be at work, I'll finish work. And then once we go home, we switch off. Because once you start taking work home, that can be really, really one of the cause of the trauma that, mental trauma. Sometimes people go through because you can't sleep well then. You're always thinking about it. You can't resolve issues after certain hours of the day. You can only do it during working hours when people are working. And so I think you have to really try and switch off and keep that discipline. And my husband instilled in me that once we leave work, please let not talk. We don't want to talk shop at all. It's and honestly, it can, because we as women, we will think about something and bring it up, and we'll just say, we are at home, and that's it. I don't want to talk about it. If you want to speak, so we've now got. Because my son also has joined the family business. So we will, if we want to discuss something, we will say that, can we have a meeting together? And we go through it, and then we go our own ways. But we'll never try and nag each other about certain things. I think it would be a very, very unhealthy situation, because there are so many things that, in business that can go wrong, and you can start blaming each other about it. But if you have a sensible way of trying to deal with it, where you respect each other's privacy, respect each other's work that they are putting in, and I think that's the way a family business can work successfully, and even for each other's mental health as well. Because if you start undermining each other, because we are all going to go back to the same environment at home, and it can be very unhealthy for you. So that would be for me, those three things that,
They're great tips, Rosie. And if anyone does go on to meet Rosie when we're out of lockdown and we've all had our vaccines, you will see how beautifully turned out she is. And you can see it from the banner, her photo. And Rosie, I'm with you on the jewelry. I don't think I've looked after myself as well as you have. But I always have to wear earrings. I always have to put jewelry on because it does make me feel much better.
And in fact, after a certain age, you feel that, you are still young, Leila, but, I feel that I've passed that to a certain extent. You just feel that after a certain age, people do let go. But I think you have to, you have to look after yourself and just feel good for yourself rather than for anybody else. You don't want to show anyone. Yeah. It's much more personal. But one of the things about one thing that I missed out on, the leadership lessons, is when you start a business, you always set up your moral compass. Because if you don't have that in your business, there will be no loyalty, customer loyalty, even with your own, when you're sourcing things. So I'll give you two examples with the body shop and one with our landlord. So when we were with the body shop and we wanted a price increase, and we had a meeting with them, and you are quite nervous when you want a price increase. You just think it's a large company. You don't want to, lose the contract. And we went with a price that we had reworked. And the way Body Shop worked in those days, especially Anita Roddick had set this up, that, when small companies are part of the Body Shop umbrella, you get a fair chance of, surviving. So when we gave them the price, and the buyer looked at the price and said, I think go back and increase this price because we want you to remain in the business. We like the way you are working with us. We don't want you to come back after 2 years and say, look, we've run out of money, or there are issues that because of the finances. And that is where you build a business relationship where there is trust. They know that the company you are working with, you want them to succeed as much as they want to succeed. And so this was one of the things that we found that really, really helpful, that when you can pick and choose companies where you are valued, and you are valued because you know that you are trusted. And we had a similar issue a few years ago. We were in financial difficulty, and one of the things that came up that, we should move out from the unit that we were, going to a smaller place, perhaps, that will give us a saving. And we went to our landlord and we said, look, we are in a bit of the strain, and we don't think we can afford to, rent this property. And they came back and said, look, we really like you as our tenants, and we will give you 6 months free. So, this, if you are true to yourself and being honest in business, honesty is, I always pick and choose who my customers are now. If I don't feel that I can work with somebody, I'd rather walk away rather than doing business and finding myself in a situation where it's difficult to get out of it. Yeah. So it's always wise to keep that moral compass where, along the years, it really pays off because people will really judge you on your background.
And I think that links back to our point we're talking about culture, doesn't it? About culture and your backgrounds. And so, Rosie, if people, I will include the links in the show notes. If people want to find out about your business, they want to buy wax from you, they want to get involved, how should they contact you? How should they do that?
So I am on LinkedIn as well. It's Rosie Khandwala. My Instagram handle is Aqua Natural Official, but that's the professional brand. If anybody wants to buy the retail side of it, it's sugarcoatedhairremoval.com. And Sugarcoated is also on Instagram. And we are on Facebook as well, Aqua Natural. So it's Rosie Khandwala. If anybody wants to look, if you can put the links of the Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, I'll include all the links in the show notes, no problem. And so thank you so much for your time. That's been fascinating about your beginnings, how you built your business, the challenges you've had, how you've bounced back. So thank you so much for your time, Rosie. And I'm sure the listeners will have found that really useful. And don't forget, this is part of Personal Development Month. So keep listening and you'll be hearing more nuggets of gold like this. And until next time, we will see you and you will hear us very soon. Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.